Because it's the mindset of the all-powerful president. The mindset of the all-powerful president who's going to tell private industry what to do without any constitutional authority to do it whatsoever. No, that's okay. He's a populist nationalist, Trump is. It's the socialists we're worried about. And he's at the National Rifle Association meeting in Kentucky on Friday, a meeting that I've spoken to some time ago. Wonderful, wonderful people there. But it's the same line over and over again. Now listen to this and tell me, does this sound Reagan-esque? Does this sound like a founding father? Or does this sound like Bernie Sanders and Hugo Chavez? Cut 9, go.
They won't be taking our jobs and bringing them into Mexico, like with Nabisco, where they leave Chicago, moving to Mexico, and so many other countries, companies, Carrier. You take a look at Carrier Air Conditioner, just left Indiana. They're leaving Indiana, they're moving to Mexico. That's not happening with me. Because when they make their air conditioners and they sell them across our now very strong border, believe me, they're going to pay a tax and they're going to say, we're not moving to Mexico anymore. It's so simple.
No, actually, Carrier told us why they're leaving. It's the Environmental Protection Agency. Why won't you say that? Why won't you confront this, Donald Trump? Why won't you talk about Carrier leaving because of the Environmental Protection Agency? You don't need to tax goods coming into this country that way. You need to stop the EPA under Obama, under these leftists, from destroying our industries, from destroying their products, from destroying American jobs. So in other words, ladies and gentlemen, when your HVAC system goes out and you need to buy a new one, and the EPA has successfully chased a lot of these companies offshore, you're going to pay a higher and higher price under the Trump model. Can you afford that? $5,000, $6,000 a unit? Because they're going to pay the tax? No, you're going to pay the tax. And that tax is going to go into the federal coffers. Nothing's going to change. In fact, it's going to get worse. Carrier said the EPA is putting it out of business. And I've had men here work on my HVAC system explaining to me why. Because every year the EPA is making it more and more difficult to build these coils and these systems and to have the proper chemicals in them. And so they say, you know what, enough is enough. We're going to get the hell out of here. And so rather than attack the EPA and the federal government and the left-wing bureaucrats and the source of the problem, we hear this: populism nationalism. Well, if that's populism nationalism, I'm a bigger populist and nationalist than everybody else because I believe in the free enterprise system and pulling back the EPA. The key word, by the way, free, followed by the key word enterprise. Carrier's not the enemy. The EPA's the enemy. Taxes the consumer, you, the American people, on $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a unit. That's not the answer. Pulling back the regulators. But it's harder to do. They're attacking Nabisco. Well, do you know the massive tariffs that are in place when we import sugar into this country, ladies and gentlemen? There's a couple families in this country that basically control the sugar industry, agriculture, and they have succeeded in getting Washington to put these massive import tariffs in place. And so the price of sugar in this country is much higher than it would be under the market system. And so Nabisco, which is in the sugar business, you know, cookies and stuff like that, they said, we can't do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. They're making it impossible for us to sell our damn cookies at a price where people will buy them, at a level where we can remain profitable and hire people. Again, Nabisco's not the enemy. Who are the hell are the politicians who are pushing these sugar subsidies? Then you'll find the problem. Now, in the Daily Signal, James Cattuso, this is a heritage site. Under this administration, so far, I want you to listen to this. Our federal government has added, under the Obama presidency, 20,642 new regulations. 20,642 new laws, covering everything and anything. The only issue is, what don't they cover? The tide of red tape, he points out, that threatens to drown U.S. consumers and businesses surged yet again in 2015. More than $22 billion per year in new regulatory costs were imposed on Americans last year, pushing the total burden for the Obama years to exceed $100 billion annually. And folks, the accumulation of these regulations, according to NAM, the National Association of Manufacturers, a group that represents American manufacturers. is over $2 trillion. Over $2 trillion. The Mexican economy isn't even close to $2 trillion. I don't think the Chinese economy is much more than $2 trillion. Massive amounts of red tape. The worst of last year's wave, in terms of cost at least, was the Environmental Protection Agency's so-called Clean Power Plan. The rule represents the first direct regulation of so-called greenhouse gas emissions from power plants at a cost of $7.2 billion a year, much more according to critics. Despite the huge cost, the plan will do nothing to mitigate global warming. Nothing. It's much easier to say, attack them, do this, do that. You know, people, the NAFTA. Oh, NAFTA, get them, the Japanese are ripping us off. They're getting our TVs, that NAFTA. NAFTA has nothing to do with Japan. The North American Free Trade Agreement. The United States, Canada, and Mexico. The idea first raised in 1979 by candidate Ronald Reagan, who signed an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in 1993 urging its passage. It was adopted in 1994. Most of the large TV manufacturers that either went out of business or were bought by South Korean or Japanese companies or what have you, it took place prior to NAFTA. Zenith was the last big one that I'm aware of. That happened in 1994, and they were going into the tank much before NAFTA was in place. So there's just so much mis- and disinformation out there to attack capitalism and market system. And I've told you many times, so here you have over 20,000 new regulations over Obama. We have over 12,000 import tariffs, products coming into this country. They're not all aimed at the American consumer, the American worker. A lot of them are put there because donors are lining the pockets of certain political candidates. But what about currency manipulation, Mark? Yeah, what about it? Let's forget about the world right now, and let's think about the United States of America. Who manipulates our currency? The Federal Reserve Board. What do you think quantitative easing is? Well, what are we on, quantitative easing number 6? These phony low interest rates. Well, Mark, I like low interest rates because I borrow money to buy a house. Fine. But what about people who are on fixed incomes and they'd like to put money into a certificate of deposit and earn 4 or 5 or 6 or 8%? What about all those people? It's not fair to them. Some people benefit. Some people are harmed by it. But whenever the government interferes, it becomes a problem. So we have massive debt, massive unfunded liabilities because of currency manipulation that conceals the real cost of these disastrous policies. And one day, when currency manipulation, to the extent that we have it now, becomes impossible in the United States, you're going to see massive interest rates and the impossibility of paying the interest rates even on our debt. So we manipulate our currency all the time. That does not excuse other countries. I'm just making a point. We got to get our own house in order, and we would be a strong, stable economic juggernaut, as we were under Reagan, with certain limited and rare exceptions, embraced free market capitalism, and attacked the abuse of the currency manipulation and so forth and so on. So we have over 20,642 regulations issued by Obama so far. He's not done. There's some biggies that are en route too.